So I'll yank this tooth that is like broken in your mouth. I'll yank it, but no freezing. There is nothing here that I can do to ease your pain.
Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by DKI Canada. Across the street, across the country. She is a true trailblazer in the realm of sports broadcasting. Andi Petrillo, a 3-time Canadian Screen Award winner as top sports host. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Coming up! Our guest today, excited to have her. She hails from Maple, Ontario. She studied at York University English and Mass Communications. At Seneca College, she took broadcast journalism. She was a reporter, host for Leafs TV, NLL reporter for ESPN, a reporter for NBA TV, Goal TV, the first woman on the Hockey Night in Canada studio panel, host of Leafs Lunch on TSN 1050, host of multiple World Championships, host of One Soccer and the FIFA World Cup, hosted 6 Olympic Games on CBC, host of the PWHL, co-host Prime Monday Night Hockey, Woman of Influence Award winner, winner of the George Rose Dan Goodwin Award for Sports Broadcasting, a 3-time winner of the Canadian Screen Award for Best Sports Host, and recently an author of Just Call Me Andi, Sports Stories from a Trailblazer. Welcome to the program, Andi Petrillo. Andi, great to have you here.
Oh my goodness, what an introduction. I think people would have left to go to the bathroom by the time you get through all of that. That is my career summed up right there. My goodness, well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we like to, goes back to my old ring announcer days. We like to make it big, baby, big, because it is. Wow. It is. Wow. It's big having you on here. So I just finished reading your book, hot off the press as well. Just Call Me Andi, Sports Stories from a Trailblazer. Excellent work, Andi. A fun read. Did you enjoy the process, and was it difficult for you?
Oh, it was an interesting one because I've never written a book before. It was my first time, so I had no clue what to expect. But yeah, the process was definitely cathartic. And I started to remember things that I had forgotten or, remembered things that were like, yeah, you know what? That is a story worth sharing because I think it can really help some young aspiring broadcasters, especially some women. So I do have to give a shout out to my literary agent, Brian Wood. He reached out to me. I wasn't even thinking about writing a book. He was the one who reached out to me. He had helped a lot of other men in the industry write books, from James Duthie to Ken Reid to, Bob McKenzie. And he's like, no woman in Canada in sports has written a book. And I think you have a story to share. And I went, okay, let's do this. And I'm at that point in my career where I want to give back. The first part of your career, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's about you. What can you do for yourself? How do you make yourself better? How do you succeed? How do you get ahead? How do you evolve? But then you also reach a point where even though you're still learning, you're like, okay, I've acquired all of this knowledge and all of this expertise. How do I now give back? And I was actually at that point in my life where I was thinking about that when Brian Wood called, and I went, this is it. This is how I hopefully can give back, is sharing these stories, offering some sort of guide, some sort of map, not just to young and aspiring broadcasters, but even to people who are currently in the industry to say, hey, are these some things that women still deal with? Let's try and change that. So it was great. I started writing it in January of 2023, handed in my final copy just before the Paris Olympics started in July of 2024. And then it was like a year of editing before it actually came out in October of 2025. So it's quite the process, and it's fun to watch.
Was the editing part difficult? Was it hard tossing stuff out? And
they actually never really asked me to toss anything out. What's funny is sometimes I could get really in the weeds of sports talk. Like there's a part in my book where I talk about my junior A hockey days from Rogers Cable York Region, and how a couple teams didn't want to be on Rogers Cable because they felt that if the games were available on TV, then nobody would actually go to the game. So I make a reference like, hadn't they heard of, Rocky Wirtz and the Chicago Blackhawks? So the editor's like, listen, no, people probably haven't heard of Rocky Wirtz and Chicago Blackhawks. Right. So you might have to elaborate on that. So it was more of like, hey, just make sure that the casual reader of sports can also appreciate this, right? Like, so sometimes I got a little in the weeds with sports and I just had to elaborate. And then, it's always just the grammar. I'm like, are you sure that isn't, just a comma instead of a semicolon? Because, I'm an English major, but you get humbled real quick when you realize how little you know about sentence structuring.
Yeah. I minored in English, majored in drama. Well,
yeah.
So I was going to be an actor at one point. So I wasn't really, how do you remember all this stuff? Like, how did you remember all this? Because there's a lot of like detail and stuff that happened that, man, I was impressed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much more that's just not even in there. What I tried to do, because the book is not linear, right? For anyone who hasn't read the book yet, it's not linear. Right. It's not like, here I was born, here's my life, and here's, steps along the way. I tried, like my storytelling, I try to make it linear, but it's really more like essays or memoirs or diary entries, right? And how I came to those topics was I did really sit and think. And I said, when I do speaking engagements, what are the questions I get asked the most? So I tried to take those questions and go, okay, I have a lot of young women who ask me about, how do you deal with social media? How do you deal with even clothing, right? I have a chapter dedicated to clothing, which might blow, some of the minds away of men, but it's so true. Like the amount of stress women feel just getting dressed to be on camera. And then even women already in the industry are older. How do I deal with ageism now that I'm part of that body image? Like you name it, all that kind of stuff. So when I get asked those types of things a lot, and I went, okay, let me think. Did I ever encounter this? Yes, I did. Let me write about it. So there is a method to my madness in my storytelling. Is I try to choose stories that I feel will resonate with both aspiring and even current broadcasters. I share my experience because I also want people to know they're not alone. And then I try to offer up pearls of wisdom. Like, how do we move on from here? Or how did I deal with it? Maybe I can give them some sort of tools to learn how to get through some certain things, right? But then also how we move on from it. So that was how I approached my storytelling, and how I kind of decided these are the stories I want to share.
Well, the word trailblazer is in the book, and certainly you being a trailblazer when it comes to sports broadcasting. Talking about your background, like, so you're second generation Canadian, daughter of Italian immigrants. How did that heritage steer you into the Andi Petrillo that we all know and love?
Yeah, and it was important for me to include that because, even though I did 5 years of radio about 10 years into my career, but I still think when you're a host, people don't really know you. When I did radio, people started to get to know me a little bit more because it's far more conversational, right? As radio podcasts, you could show your personality more. And that's when I really, like a decade into my career, I went, oh, for the first time ever, I feel like I'm really connecting with the viewers because I'm opening myself up. So it was really important for me to start the book off by sharing stories of my family because I feel like that also lets people understand a little bit more why I am, the way I am. And I come from a family of feisty women. I come from a family of incredibly open-minded men and who are all about, equal treatment and, how it starts in the home. It really does. It's so cliche, but it starts in the home. So it's really important for me to share that. And I also feel like it is very Canadiana to be like, I am a proud Canadian. I got Canadian jerseys behind me, right? Yeah. But behind there's a cute little teddy bear who's got the Italian flag, on him. And that's what we are in Canada. Like, we are just this beautiful multicultural country. And when sporting events come around, it's this beautiful synergy of you will always wave the maple leaf, but then you also have this other country that you can cheer for too. So it's really special when you bring it to the world of sport. It can be really special, especially when one of your teams maybe isn't that good and you can cheer for another one. Like we're still waiting to see if Italy's going to qualify for the World Cup, but I know Canada's going to be there. Right.
It helps when you're hosting. So one thing we, of course, wouldn't know just watching you unless you got into it, on a personal level, you were a pretty good piano player, I understand. Tell us about winning the Adjudicator Award.
Oh, so let me tell you, Joe, I was getting that award no matter what. So that's something I share in the book where the first taste of competition in my life actually wasn't through sport. It was through music. So my parents, God bless, they grew up with very little to nothing. They were very poor, so they wanted to give me everything. And for my father in particular, it was very important. He has a love for music, and he wanted me to play the piano. And I love it, love playing it. Got a piano at home, still play here, especially around Christmas. We all gather around and sing some Christmas tunes. But I would do a lot of competitions. I did a lot of recitals and I did a lot of competitions when I was younger. And that's how the competitive juices really started flowing, was through music first. And this one competition, I discovered there was something better than first place. And it was called the Adjudicator Award. And it's the Judges Award. And I went, oh, what? There's something better than first. And a young man that I was competing against had been like the winner a few years in a row. And in my brain, I was crushing that kid like every day. It was like, you know what I mean? Like you're training for a boxing match and you got your opponent up on the wall. I was just training for like a piano competition. I had this kid up on my wall. I'm like, you're dead. I'm going to play my Murray and I'm going to kill you. And I did. So yeah, even music isn't safe from me. Like I am a very competitive person, Joe. I am one of those people where it's like, I will race you to the door. I will find something small and find a way to compete. But my first introduction into competition was through music, and I got that, and I still have that Adjudicator Award. It's over my piano downstairs. I put that thing up with pride.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can relate to that competitive aspect of life. And so it did take you into a sporting career. You were still competitive in that realm too, but it sounds like physically things started to change, and sports was no longer your dreams, I suppose, of being an athlete were sort of ended, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people share the same story, but like my body broke down, and I touch on a topic that I know can make people feel uncomfortable, but I felt it was very important because at the end of the day, women's bodies, men's bodies, hello, don't need to be a genius to figure out that we're different. So it was really important for me to mention this in the book because it was one International Women's Day event that I was hosting way back when. And we were talking about all the reasons why young girls were leaving sport. And the most obvious, right, is you don't have the financial support, you don't have the proper facilities, maybe there isn't the emotional support behind the family the way it would be for a young boy, because parents, maybe they don't realize it, but it's like the young boy can make a career out of this, but the young girl can't, right? So they don't even have that kind of support. And I said, hey, has anyone thought about menstruating and how when young girls go through it, suddenly that's a very embarrassing time. And if other teammates of theirs aren't going through it, they don't know who to talk to. They feel maybe like shy and embarrassed that they're the only ones that like go to the bathroom or go behind a closed door to change where everyone else is changing in front of everyone. Oh, and by the way, a lot of our uniforms are still white shorts. And the whole room went quiet. So nobody really said anything publicly. The second I got off the stage, it was like a stampede of women coming to me saying, oh my God, I remember this one time and I was so embarrassed, or I remember this other time and I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, see, this is a conversation we have to have, because for me, I also share in the book that I was very young. I was 10 years old when I started menstruating. So my body was already going through things that other young girls were not going through. And it was also starting to break down because the training methods when I was playing sports, like they were already not anywhere near where they are now, which there's still a lot of work to do to cater to the female body versus the male body. But now can you imagine in like the 90s? Like no freaking way. So yeah, my body just couldn't handle it. My knees, I blew out the MCL, both knees, blew out the ACL, one knee, needed reconstructive knee surgery. So a lot of that was just my body couldn't keep up. So that was fading away for me from an athlete's perspective. I accepted that I wasn't going to be going to the Olympics as an athlete, but my passion never waned for sports, and I turned it into a broadcasting career. So, and it's funny because the book may be titled Just Call Me Andi, Stories from a Trailblazer, but I did actually want to call it Just Call Me Andi, the wannabe athlete who made it as a sportscaster. But the publisher kind of said, let's keep it the Trailblazer because you are that in many other aspects too. And I went, okay. I said, but at the end of the day, I'm still also a wannabe athlete who didn't quite make it as the athlete, but did so as a broadcaster. But that's in short my story. But I thought it was really important to share because I do think that's still a big story in the women and a young girl's journey in sports that sometimes gets overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 99% of sports broadcasters are the wannabe athletes for sure.
Yeah.
That's the way it works, right? Okay, so you study at York University, mass communications and English, and then you went to Seneca for sports journalism, broadcast journalism. But when did you get the bug? Where was it that you said to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this for a living?
Well, it's funny because I always loved sports, but I always thought I was going to be an investigative reporter. Growing up, like my mom and my dad, they were obsessed with like 60 Minutes and Fifth Estate and W5, like you name it, like the investigative stuff. So I always thought I was going to be like a war correspondent. I was going to be a voice for the voiceless. I was going to be the eyes that would bring sketchy things into the light and not let them get away, with working in the shadows. And, I still have that investigative part of me. I've just applied it to sports, but I never really kind of was encouraged to get into sports broadcasting. And I don't think it was anyone's fault. I loved the investigative side of things. And even when I joined a local cable station, Rogers Cable in York Region, I was very much part of the news department. But at the time, I was still in school, and it was actually a radio teacher where every week we had to submit a cassette. Do those things still exist? Do people know what cassettes are? Yeah, so I had to submit a cassette. And it was like an all-encompassing report. So you had to do news, you had to do sports, you had to do weather, and you had to do traffic. So it was like about a 2-minute thing that we would submit every week. And my teacher was a gentleman by the name of Jeff Howitt, who is actually like the program director at Chum FM Radio. And he used to produce Roger, Rick, and Marilyn in the morning. That's for all the local Toronto people who remember that probably. And one day, I was probably 3 weeks into this assignment, so it wasn't all that long. It was probably just my third tape that I handed in to him. And finally, he stopped it after my sports report. And he went, do you notice that your energy completely changes when you're doing sports? He's like, I can feel it coming through, like your voice, the audio, everything is different. The energy is different. And he's like, do you love sports? I said, of course I love sports. I play sports all the time. I watch sports. I'm addicted to sports. And he's like, well, have you ever thought about turning that into your career? And that was the first time where I went, oh, maybe that is something. Like I never thought I could turn like a true love and passion into a job, right? I just always thought that I was going to get into investigative reporting and that was that. And I just, sports were my escape. And when he brought that up, I went to my local station. And at the time, a gentleman by the name of Rob Leth was still the sports producer and host. And I said, do you need somebody to do some stuff with you? And he went, sure, no problem. And it was such a game changer because I was having an absolute blast covering sports. And I was like, how did I not think of this sooner? And then eventually he moved on. He got a job with Global. I got the job at Rogers Cable as the sports producer and host there. And the rest is kind of history. I never looked back after that.
Yeah, interesting. We had a picture that Vic showed us earlier. Let's show us the picture now, Vic, before we came on air. And here's a very young Andi and our producer, Vic, working together at Rogers Cable. What do you remember most about those days?
Oh, they were so much fun because, we were all friends. Like we worked together, we went for dinner, drinks, like you name it. Like we were just like one big family there because it was so tiny and we were just always in the community. I was covering sports, but it was all like, high school sports or like little Timbit sports, like you name it. But the families would get so excited to watch their kid that night on the Rogers Cable news. And my goodness, we had like such a blast. And that's where you really, as a broadcaster too, I got to do everything. I learned how to work a camera. I know how to white balance. I know how to level a camera. I also learned like the editing, but also we did it on this little, like, at least for sports, we would edit our pieces on linear. So it wasn't like the nonlinear where you had all the funky programs that, kids can do afterwards. We didn't have that at Rogers Cable. It was like you had to do it in a linear fashion. But Rob also taught me how to, how do I say this in a nice way? It was like a little bit of fibbing, but not really.
Oh, so he would be like, of course.
He's like, shoot the pitcher for a little bit, shoot the batter for a little bit, and then shoot the outfield for a little bit. So then I would edit it in a way where it was like pitcher, pitch, batter, hit, and then outfielder catch the ball. It may not have been the original pitch. Exactly. It may not have been the original, you know what I mean? But it was like seamless. So I got to do that at the cable level because you can actually touch the equipment. And it's funny because how I even got in was when I was in college, we had to do 100 hours of internship. And I had a connection already with Rogers Cable because I had actually been there. I mean, Vic might remember that I was 19 when I first started volunteering there. So at this point I was, early 20s, but I go back to complete my internship. And a lot of other people in my class, they were really excited because they got internships at TSN, Sportsnet. And that's a big deal. Like, I get it. But when our internship was done and we all came back to give our reports, they fetched coffee. Like the people who went there fetched coffee. Rogers Cable, I was like, oh, let me show you how to do this camera. Let me show you how to do this edit. I know how to do a VO because they let me do VOs, right? Like all this kind of stuff that, I was able to learn at the cable level, which was so wonderful. And everyone there was so helpful that these other, kids didn't get to do when you are at TSN and Sportsnet, because you break that equipment, you got problems. But Rogers, we were just one big family. It was wonderful.
The first big break, Leafs TV. How did that transpire?
I was handing out demo tapes. I was at that point, I was loving my time at Rogers, but the time also comes to move on, and I wanted to elevate my game. And I had auditioned at different places at the Score, which still existed at the time. They told me I was overqualified. I did audition at Sportsnet. I was underqualified, and I was like, oh man. So a former camera guy at Rogers Cable, actually, a gentleman by the name of Armando, got a job with MLSE, and he was working with Leafs TV. And I ran into him at a golf tournament that I was covering for Rogers Cable. And I just said, listen, anything comes up, you let me know. And he went, all right. And then I didn't think he'd be calling me a few weeks later, but he did. And he's like, they're auditioning. They're auditioning for a Toronto Marlies reporter. And I went, I don't care. I want it. So when I went into the audition, they didn't ask me anything about the Marlies. They kept asking me about the Leafs. And I went, what's going on here? Only to discover Armando got his wires a little crossed, and they were actually auditioning for a Toronto Maple Leafs reporter. So I clearly crushed the audition. They called me a few hours later and offered me the gig. And it happened very quickly because I think that was all in September as training camp was going on. So it was really bittersweet because I had to say goodbye to all these incredible people at Rogers. But it also goes to show, and I want this to, we know this, but it always bears repeating, right? Like everyone is your teammate and you never know who's going to help you. And I know sometimes some on-air people, can be a little prissy. But everyone matters. Your camera people matter. Your editors matter. Everyone matters. And you never know who's going to be the one to help you. I never knew that it would be a camera guy who would call me up to say, listen, here's an opportunity, send in your demo, and then look at where it led to, right? We're all teammates. We all, work together. And that's always a nice little lesson and a nice reminder that everyone helps a show go to air. So everyone should be treated equally, respectfully, because then you never know which one of them are going to be the ones to help you down the road. So for me, it was a camera guy who opened that door for me at Leafs TV. And I did my thing, got the job, and, here I am now.
Go ahead, Vic. You got a question. I'm just kidding.
I think the difference with you was the attitude. You'd come in, smile on your face, bang out your work. Hey, Andy, can we record the show an hour early? Sure. No problem. It was never a no, never something negative. You always had that smile, and you're always ready to help someone. So we were happy to help you in any little way we could to make you succeed. So that was part of it, your attitude.
I appreciate that. But we were having a blast. I came in where it was and it's good people. That's what matters. It's so this industry can be so stressful, and there are moments, especially when you're doing live TV. Every Thursday at Rogers Cable, those junior A games, they were live. And then around Christmas, remember we would always do that auction. It's live. Live TV can be so stressful. But when you've got good people and you feel like everyone has your back, then it's a great team and it's a great environment. And yeah, it's a good old, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and everyone's happy. And I think we really did. Like, we had a really good group there. And I say this, even some stories that I share in the book, like leaving Rogers was hard. Even leaving MLSC when I went to Hockey Night in Canada. Like, I'm going to Hockey Night in freaking Canada. But it was so sad because, like, the people that I worked with at Leafs TV and Gold TV Raptors, like under that MLSC umbrella, it was like, I hated that I was leaving them. And then even when it was time to move on from Leafs lunch and leave TSN, like, there was these incredible, it's always the people. The people always make it incredible. And that's always what's hard, to move on from, are the people. But some great memories from those Rogers cable days, that's for sure. And I just wish we had more of those stations because it's so beneficial to young broadcasters.
And it doesn't take any more effort to be kind, right? It just doesn't take any more effort. Like, why would you not want to be kind? And just, Pat Mercer, who hired me back in 1984, said, Joe, you see the same people on the way up as you see on the way down. And, if you're just kind and just treat people respectfully all the way up, you're not going to have any problem on the way down or whatever. So it's like, it's really, but it does not hurt to make the maybe a little extra effort, maybe not, to be kind as it does to be a jerk, right?
Well, yeah. And again, this is a high pressure industry. I get it. Right. And anyone who works in high pressure industries, like, you understand it. And you also understand how quickly, you can snap or what have you. Like, I get it. Always apologize. But at the same time, you're so right. This is a very volatile industry. Like, I'm a contract worker. In fact, the last time I was ever a salaried employee was when I had my job at Rogers Cable. I was hired as an employee. Then once I left to go to Leafs TV, I have been a contract worker ever since. Like athletes, we are always performing for our next contract. And sometimes it's, because you didn't do a good job. And oftentimes it's because it's completely out of your hand that you will find yourself out of a contract. Maybe the station you were working for lost the right. Like, that's what happened to me. Like, I was trucking along at Hockey Night in Canada, but Hockey Night in Canada lost the rights. That's not because I wasn't any good at what I was doing. We lost the rights, right? Like, and this is the other thing. So be careful, because you're right. Like, the ebbs and flows, and there are some people in this industry that when they're at the top, they turn into jerks. But then, like, a few years later, they're down here and then they're asking everybody for help. And I'm like, really? You want help now because you were pretty nasty a couple years ago, right? Like, so don't ever, that's another piece of advice I would give people. Don't ever drink your own Kool-Aid, even when you're at the top, because it's inevitable that you will be knocked down at some point. That's just how the industry goes. It is not as smooth sailing as you think. And in fact, when I hit hard times, and I shared it in the book, this one other young woman in the industry, she had been let go by a network, and I took her out for lunch because I wanted her to know that everything was going to be okay. And I shared my story with her, and she went, I had no clue that you had been out of a contract twice in 1 year. I got dumped on my butt twice in 1 year. Okay. And she went, I had no clue. And I just said, yeah, because like you hustle. Like, at the end of the day, you hustle, you find a way to land back on your feet. I'm like, but that's what this industry is. It's very rare that it's going to do this. There's going to be the odd person where maybe it does, but for majority of people, it's this. So you're right. Like, just be kind, because you never know who you're going to have to lean on. And then, quite frankly, you need to reciprocate. You never know. Like, when you are in a position where you're up here again, help others, right? That's how the industry goes.
Yeah, you mentioned about the getting sacked more or less twice in 1 year, and that's at the peak. I mean, that's coming off the Sochi Olympics and everything else, and a lot of good stuff going for you. But that happens. But I wanted to run a clip here from your Leafs TV gig. This is from it's a Leafs post game clip. Let's run that.
I think there's been a little bit of a divide between the fans and the players for a few years. It's been allowed to grow. We've got to bridge that gap again. And if I can help by coming up here, being funny sometimes, or just trying to explain to the fans what we're thinking as a coaching staff and how our players are feeling, and taking the suggestions I give them, I think is a good way for them to feel part of it.
It is a preseason game tonight, but still, it's a big deal to have the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs come up before a game and talk to the fans. Are these types of things fun for you?
No, they are. You see, I don't think it's a big deal to me. It's just what we do. And I've had the fortune of coaching Anaheim, Washington, and San Jose, where you might not view them as big markets, but this is part of your job. I think there's been a...
He had a real dry sense of humor, didn't he, Ron? He was a funny guy.
It is actually pretty freaky that you would play a clip that had Ron Wilson. We were just talking about him the other day. We were doing the Leafs game on Monday for Prime Monday Night Hockey, Leafs Pittsburgh, great comeback by the Leafs. And we got into this conversation, me and a couple people, about coaches that came through the Leaf system. And I said, Ron Wilson was one of those where I felt like he was very misunderstood because he had a dry sense of humor. He was very cerebral. So sometimes he can get into his own head. And in some ways, like, he was socially awkward, which in a world where, this is the other thing, like Paul Maurice and Ron Wilson, like, they accomplished the same things for the Leafs, as in neither of them got them into the playoffs. Like, neither of them took them to the promised land in any way. But yet Paul Maurice is remembered more fondly because he knew how to, just schmooze with the media. He knew the lines. He knew how to be funny. He knew how to just be, somebody that was entertaining. Whereas Ron Wilson was so cut and dry and it came across awkward. So for some reason, it's like he was considered bad. Paul Maurice, good. Ron Wilson, awkward. Paul Maurice, great. Like, and I'm not trying to say anything again. Like, Paul was great to me. Mo was my first coach when I entered the NHL. He was the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he was fantastic to me. But like, Ron Wilson, it's just so funny that you would use him, because when you got to know him, he was actually really wonderful. But once again, he was another one that just couldn't get the team to the playoffs. It was tough.
You had a scare, a very big scare. You had a couple of surgeries to remove a tumor in your jaw, and you openly talk about that in your book. And that must have been a really scary time for you, and especially in this business, where your appearance is really important and everything else. How did you manage through that?
Yeah, just like the industry itself, as I just mentioned moments ago, is a roller coaster to begin with. You start to realize how quickly it can be taken away in other ways. And you're right, fair or not fair, TV is a visual medium. And the first time I had the tumor removed from my jaw, which, I don't know, I feel like if I look straight on, you can also see that this jaw sticks out a little bit more than this one, because this one had to have like bone shaved down on it because of the tumor. Well, I know. I always look at my face. I'm like, am I lopsided? But I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. You had a tumor twice in your face. But it was really scary because when I went to have it removed, like, they got to tell you, by the way, that thing's growing around nerves, the risk of paralysis. I'm like, paralysis? I can't have half my face be paralyzed. Like, what are you talking about? And then, the second time, because it unfortunately, came back as I was hosting the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Then it was growing like inwards, and it was too close to my tongue. And if something went wrong there was a risk of me developing a lisp. I'm just like, holy hell, right? Like, it was pretty frightening, but knock on wood, I go just about, I used to go every year. Now I go every 2 years. I still go for like the x-rays just to make sure nothing comes back. And second time around, they basically poured acid down my gums to make sure that those cells that were kind of morphing into, something that was creating these tumors. Yeah. Like we burned it, so to say. I don't know. I'm so scared. That was another thing. They're like, we're going to pour this acid down your face now. Try not to move, because if it gets on your skin, it'll burn you. I'm like, this is great. Everything about this is so great. But it went well. So again, it's been like, 11 years so far, so good. But one story I do share is, it did crack like some molars during this whole process. Like, it was a month-long process. So I had just hosted a pregame show. I was in a ton of pain, and I went to the Leafs dentist. They're always, someone's at a game. And I said, you got to help me. And he said, no problem, but I'm here for the players. So I'll yank this tooth that is like broken in your mouth. I'll yank it, but no freezing. There is nothing here that I can do to ease your pain. And I'm just like, whatever you do, don't get blood on my outfit, because I still have a post-game show. So there I was in the Leafs chair watching the game, praying nobody took a stick to the mouth, as like the dentist is in there going, and I was like, oh, Lord, have mercy on my soul. So, I'm tough too. Hockey players aren't the only ones who are tough.
That you are, no doubt about that. So you also, in addition to being tough, you're very creative. You put together some nice features. We have a little bit of one that you did with Leafs defenseman Jeff Finger at the Science Center. Let's roll a little bit of that.
All right, so the score is 2-2. This is going to be the tiebreaker. I gotta finish the race.
Why
Okay, we see a little bit
I
of your competitive nature, but yeah, go ahead.
No, but why I ever thought I could beat him, like my arm strength compared to his, I had like wet noodle arms. Where I did beat him though, at the Science Center, they had this thing where you let, like a cat, you had to jump from a high perch and you had to land softly on your feet. I nailed that. Like I could totally be a ninja. He was just like, and like had the whole thing explode. But so I beat him at that. But the strength, the speed, oh my goodness, like what was I ever thinking? But that was fun. I love doing that kind of stuff because till this day, I still love showing other sides of athletes. I think we can very easily, very quickly see athletes as just numbers. And we forget the human side. We forget that they can be fun, funny. We forget that they are brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, like, sons, daughters. We forget all that. And I love features because I think it shows the human side of them. That's not to say we're still not going to go to air if they had a bad game and say they had a bad game, but you do so, I think, a little bit more respect. I mean, I'm never a hot take person anyways. I would never attack a person. I would say the game was bad and, their stats aren't looking good, but I will never attack the person. But I always think it's so important to share that side of athletes. And I always had a ton of fun, and the athletes themselves loved it. Like it got to the point where if I said, hey, you want to do a feature? They're like, yep, let's do something, because they knew that it would be fun, right? They knew we would do fun stuff like that.
There's no gotcha moments here, right? So, okay, so now you get the gig at Hockey Night in Canada. Tell us about that. That moment when you achieve that incredible goal, and what that means for you, your family, and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we grow up watching Hockey Night in Canada. I feel like that's like a rite of passage for so many, Canadians. And even when I was with Leafs TV, I remember on Saturday nights in the press box, we would all go into the hallway during the first intermission because, you also had to listen to Coach's Corner. And I remember Bob McKenzie being in there and he would hush everybody. And he's like, Coach's Corner's up, and he would crank up the volume and we'd all go and we'd listen to, what Don had to say. And that would also become news, that night or the next day, depending on what Don Jerry went on about. But, I remember stories even before I got in the industry of like my family saying Hockey Night in Canada is what made them, feel Canadian. My grandfather, my mom's father, when they immigrated here, he was picking up jobs wherever he could to support his family. And, one of the jobs he would work in the sewers, and cold nights, like through the bone type of cold nights. And one night he's sitting there and he would work with a bunch of Irish guys, and they were all going on and on about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this hockey? And what are these Leafs? So they would explain this to him, and he would say he saved up enough money and bought a TV, and the family would all come to his house for Saturday nights to watch Hockey Night in Canada. And when my grandfather passed away, we had a Toronto Maple Leafs pin on his lapel. And for him, and he passed away just like a few months after I got the job, but he was able to watch me on Hockey Night for a good month or so before he passed. And it was just like this wonderful full circle moment where here he is, like watching his granddaughter on a show that, he watched every Saturday night, but also a show that made him feel Canadian. And it was just, such a wonderful moment. And it meant everything to be on that show. Like that was the cathedral of hockey shows in Canada. So, and then also to find out that I was the 5th woman ever to be on it was pretty incredible. So, for something that had been around for, I think they celebrated 60 years when I was with them. So for a show to be around for 60 years and I was just the 5th woman, it's like, woo, that's pretty cool.
Speaking of the 60 years of Hockey Night in Canada, Dick Irvin was among those on hand, along with you, Eddie. Let's roll a clip of that.
I was born. My dad was coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs. They won the Stanley Cup that year, actually. About a month after I was born, they won the Cup. So I've been involved in this thing all my life.
So many women come up to me and just say, I think sometimes people forget that women love hockey too, and we watch it, and they actually make up a good chunk of the viewership. So to watch a woman who actually speaks to them like they're not women, that they're actually fans of the game, that they know hockey, they really appreciate that and they love it. And I feel the exact same way.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I'm a baby in all of these clips.
Well, it's it was a while ago, so that's the way it works, right? But I think that it just says to me when you're talking about how important it was for your grandfather. It was Hockey Night in Canada. The family came over, watched TV, and you're part of that great institution. I mean, the family had to be incredibly proud for you.
Oh my goodness. I mean, my family, they're my biggest supporters. And, I wouldn't, and I know again, it's a cliche thing to say that I wouldn't be where I am without them, but that's also because, and it's so true because the industry is very demanding, right? Like this is a vocation in many ways. It's not like you go to work and then when you leave work, you've clocked out and you're not thinking about work. You're always in work, right? Like if I'm not doing a game tonight, that doesn't mean I'm still not having to keep up with everything going on in the hockey world. I'm still watching other games. I'm still, hearing whatever news is going on. Like, especially now we're in an Olympic year. Like I'm already starting to keep track of all these winter sports that are coming about. Like it is something that consumes you. And the word passion gets overused a lot, but it's so true. And I say that to all these, students in classes when I go speak to them, like, make sure you love this. Make sure this is your passion because it will consume you in many ways. That isn't to say you can't take like breaks here and there. I get it. But you also, like, if you love sports, you're watching and you're reading up and keeping track of sports no matter what. But this is what this industry is, right? So like if you come back from a 2-week vacation and somebody's like, the biggest trade ever just happened, do you know about it? And you're like, no, well, that's not good. Enjoy your vacation, but you still also have to kind of know what's going on, right? Like it truly consumes you. And because of that, I've missed birthdays, I've missed like Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever. But my family has always been amazing because they've like, listen, we don't have to celebrate day of. Like if you're working, like even, so this is 2 years in a row now, even with Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey, our first Monday is always on Canadian Thanksgiving Monday, right? And I love Thanksgiving. It's actually my favorite holiday. But my family's like, listen, we either, we can do it on the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, the Monday. We can do it the following week if it's easier for you. Right? Like my family is so understanding that way. My husband is so amazing that way too, where it's like, babe, I know this is your birthday, but can we like celebrate another day or what? He's like, no problem. Like we don't get fixated on the days anymore because like, we just know that when and my husband, thank goodness is a former athlete, former coach, he gets it. There he is, John Conway, former goalkeeper, Major League Soccer and goalkeeper coach when they won the title in 2017. Yeah, with TFC. So very supportive. And, even with like hockey night, it was just understood. Every Saturday, I'm going to be working. And what do we do a lot of on Saturdays? Is, everyone, not just Italians, but like we have weddings. Well, guess what? Maybe I can make the wedding. Maybe I can't. Maybe I'll show up at like 1 a.m, and make last call at the bar. But everyone understood though. Everyone completely understood. So when you have a really supportive family and also friends, I'll throw in some really good friends who've, been through a lot with me too, then it allows you to be the best you can be at your job. And I've said this one time when I accepted an award and I thanked my husband and I just said, you allow me to be the best I can be at work because you don't make me feel guilty for working. And that's so key. Just having that support has meant everything to me.
Well, Andy's Andy, wherever we see Andy, and it's interesting how how much fun you have in your job too. You had a nice run on Leafs Lunch, TSN 1050 Radio. An interesting interaction we have here with Dave Poulin. Let's roll that.
No! Poulin! No!
Hi, Andy.
it.
So anyway, we have no idea what we have no idea. Paul Pasco has sent us a bunch of clips, and we picked a few of them, and that was the one we picked from Lise Lynch. Something was going on with you and Pooley, and I have no idea what the deal was, but obviously a lot of ad-libbing on that show and a lot of being on your toes at all times.
So I'll say
responding and reacting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the specific, but I'll say this. I clearly lost a bet. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
So I'm always competing. I love competition. Even on Thursdays, my Coast to Coast show on Prime, whenever games go into OT, we always do our OT picks. And I get very into it and I get very angry when I don't win. I must have lost something to Pooley, and then he ended up being my co-host the very next day. Yeah, so I knew he was going to rub it in my face.
He was going to be gloating. You're hoping he wouldn't be so bad, but he made it bad. So everything's back. On the rails. You received the Canadian Screen Award for your work at the Pan Am Games. That must have been a special moment for you.
It was incredible because there was a lot going on in my life at the time, right? Like I was really questioning, my role in the industry because again, the rights had, Hockey Night in Canada, we knew that the rights had left for the start of the 2014, season. And so I was no longer doing hockey. I had just hosted, FIFA World Cup 2014, but it didn't matter. Like I was out of a gig. Like that was the year, like the 2014 year heading into 2015 was very difficult. And even though CBC couldn't hold on to me full time because they lost Hockey Night, they were able to bring me back for certain events, one of them being the Pan American Games. So I was slowly, starting to land on my feet again. And I was like, just the yo-yo that goes through your brain, the mind screw in your brain and all this kind of stuff. And then it was almost like the universe's way of saying, don't go, we're going to give you work, but also you are appreciated in the industry. So that was the first one that I won. It was on International Women's Day. So I also won it on International Women's Day. And I learned afterwards that I also became the first woman to win that award for Best Sports Host. So, there was just like so many emotions because I had been through the ringer, the previous year and a half, was just starting to land on my feet. Then that happens. And I almost had like a Sally Field moment where it's like, you love me, you really do love me. So I think I'm going to stay for a while. But yeah, it definitely motivated me. It encouraged me to stick with it because those are voted on by people in the industry. Right. So I was like, okay. They do see me. I'm seen. So keep going, So sometimes those little accolades along the way, while you don't do your work for them, it is nice when you do get them and you're like, okay, that's a nice little encouragement to keep going.
Right. And you had hosted it in 2014 and then Pyeongchang almost became a nightmare. But then, of course, you 21 and 22 back-to-back Canadian Screen Awards. That makes it 3. The first woman, as you mentioned, it's pretty amazing how that happens. The first woman to win the award on International Women's Day and all that stuff. Nothing happens by mistake, in my opinion. But that's 3 awards. What's the most significant part of that accomplishment for you, winning 3 of those awards?
Oh, wow. Again, it's recognition from peers, I think, more than anything. The last 2 as well were really special because I had hosted those Olympics on my own. Like prior to that, which is great. I've had amazing co-hosts, but you always work hard to get that solo seat. And that was really special. But the awards themselves, so the first woman, and at that point too, I still was the only woman to have won. And then finally, after that, Kate Burness got her award. And I really hope that, those are the floodgates that need to open to see that so many more women are deserving of, yes, nominations, but also to win and be up there on that stage. But the awards just remind me of everyone I worked with. I go back to that, especially those Olympics, Tokyo, Beijing. We still call those the COVID Games. and they were highly stressful. The Tokyo ones in particular, because those were the first ones back. We were still very much in COVID protocol. We were being tested every other day. And there was always the stress of like, if you tested positive, you had to go in quarantine and then you feel like you let your team down. Like imagine here, like I'm hosting this show, and if I can't host it, I feel like I've let everybody down who's worked so hard to make me shine. So I lived with that kind of anxiety and stress and everything. But we pulled through. We really pulled through. So when I won that, I'm like, my crew got me through this. This was amazing. And this will always be dedicated to them. So those awards always mean something because of the people who helped me also achieve it. That's why they're always so special.
Well, you talk about yourself, Kate Burness, two strong women. You got a chance to host PWHL as well. And, of course, interviewing Billie Jean King a couple of times. And I know that was a career highlight for you. You talked about it in the book. Yeah. We have a clip from the inaugural puck drop, PWHL.
Ooh. I've been there through tennis. I know what it feels like. We signed a $1 contract in 1970 to go against the establishment to start women's professional tennis. And we did it, and it was so scary. I mean, it was so scary. And I think some of them are probably feeling, it's scary. But they're thinking about, one thing I love about the players is they talk about they're doing this not for themselves only, but for the future generations. So kids out there that are, young girls that are 8, 9, 10, when they were at the draft, for instance, they were crying, those kids. I looked over and they had their uniform, their jerseys on, and they were crying because they knew now they'd have a chance to be a pro hockey player.
And they say if you build it, they will come, and they have, especially in Canada. I mean, Toronto has sold out all 12 games. Ottawa's going to set a record for most attendance for a women's pro game.
I can't thank Canadians enough because they're going to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's happening. And are you surprised? I mean, tell us about your thoughts about the PWHL and what's happening.
Oh, I mean, I'm not surprised that they are thriving because these are incredible, fighters. And you heard what Billie Jean King said. That's another thing too, right? Like, it's scary when you go out on a limb, or when you're the first, or when you're fighting for something. It is freaking scary. And those women who formed the union first, and then they were going out and doing these like showcase games, they didn't know what was going on, but they knew they had to take this chance. They knew that there was no other way that women's hockey and, trickle effect, obviously sport, but in this particular case, hockey, they knew it wasn't going to thrive unless A, they stuck together, and B, they just, fought the big fight, even though it would have been probably so easy for them to just go out and get regular jobs to make money. They were like, this was so important for them. And the PW has been thriving ever since. And obviously here we are year 3, and we're going to see 2 new teams in Vancouver and Seattle. They're doing it right. They had a CBA. I admire these women tremendously. Just the courage and the fortitude and the will to just keep on going, even when everyone is constantly putting you down. I mean, we've all heard the chorus, no one watches women's sports, and you just got to deal with some knuckle draggers along the way too. But they kept going. And I mean, Billie Jean is just, she's such a force. Like I get goosebumps every time she's around. She herself is not intimidating, but her aura is like, right? But she's so warm and lovely. And it was just to be a part of the PW. I mean, at the end of the month, we're going to start showing the games again. The league gets going, and I just can't wait because it's so amazing.
And now the WNBA is coming to Toronto. What can we expect with the WNBA coming?
Yeah, I mean, if it's any indication of the test game, so to say, that they played here, which sold out very quickly, I mean, you have a huge fan base here. You have a lot of basketball fans. And this is what I think people also sometimes assume, that it's just going to be women. So I've been to quite a few PWHL games as a fan. And I have been surrounded by dudes, and they're not dudes with their girlfriends or with their wives, or they brought their daughters. They're dudes going to a hockey game, and they love it. So I think you're going to have also a lot of just guys who love basketball who are going to go to a basketball game. And that's what it's all about, is you're seeing sports, period. Like, want to go to a sporting event? Great. So I think, it's also really important to realize that, yes, it'll probably be mostly females in the crowd, but there are just a lot of guys who are going too because they just want to see some really cool sports. And I think what we can expect is probably the same kind of reception that the hockey receive. You have the best of the best. These are the top tier leagues, right? The PWHL are the best hockey players in the world. The WNBA has the best basketball players in the world. So, I think that's what you can expect is just some great competition and just more nights to be able to go out and watch sports with friends. Who doesn't want that? That's another part I never understood. We can get into the business side of it, where sponsors and networks and everybody is realizing that there is this untapped side to the business, right? Open that up and you'll just make more money. Hello. But then also just for sports fans, you just have more sports to go to. And especially, at the start, more affordable tickets to purchase as well, right? So it can be far more family friendly for people. So I think it's going to be wonderful. I think you're going to see the reception is going to be through the roof. I mean, I'll be going to games, so I can't wait.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we got these the WNBA, PWHL, and a lot of these sports leagues starting up and booming and blossoming, and it's all great. And it's empowering women. But there is pushback from, you mentioned earlier, the knuckle draggers. How do you deal with that kind of stuff, the nonsense on social media, how do you deal with it? How do you fight it? What's the way to deal with it?
So there is a chapter in my book all on social media and how to deal with it, especially for women. I mean, men get attacked on there too, but it usually is results based, whereas women, there's always a sexual violence undertone to it, which is, pretty horrible. And women are just easily dismissed based on their looks, right? I mean, even look at female athletes. They're too butchy, they're too sexy, they're too tall, they're too short. It's we can't freaking win in any way, shape, or form. So I do have a chapter dedicated to social media and how I hope I can help people manage that. And I flat out say it is okay to turn your mentions off. Just turn them off. These are strangers. You don't need to hear from them. Let them yell into a cavernous room. They don't know that their messages aren't reaching you. Who gives a crap, right? Turn it off if that's what protects your sanity. But in the world of as far as female sportscasters, as far as female athletes, I just don't care. I really don't care what they have to say. I completely ignore them. I go about, and I think that's why for some of the stories that I share in the book, I did have to think, and I went, oh my goodness, I completely forgot about that. Because I never let people, hold me back, nor did I ever let some of their actions be debilitating or a crutch for me in any way. So I just bulldozed right through sexism, right? Even though it was pretty obvious somebody was saying something to me because I'm a woman, they never would have said that to a man. I never let it crumple me. I just went, and just continue to push forward. You're not going to hold me back. And there is a quote that I always repeat to myself is the lion never cared for the opinion of sheep. Just remember that. The lion, if sheep are saying something to a lion, remember the lion's far more powerful. So remember how powerful you are. The lion never cares for the opinion of sheep. Just keep going. So if they're going to keep, yapping away, they can yap away in their little corner. I'm just going to continue to be on this escalator that is rising. So don't ever let them bring you down. And that's just, I think a lot of these women too, on the athlete side, they never listen to nobody's going to watch. They never listen to nobody's going to buy tickets. They didn't listen. And now look at how they thrive, right? So it's the same thing in so many other areas for women in sport, and also just maybe areas for women in professional settings regardless. That's another, feedback that I've received, which has kind of caught me off guard, but also went, okay, good. I'm glad. As I've had a lot of women who are not in sports, but they are pretty high up in their profession, which can still be male dominated. And they said, so many of your stories resonated with me. You came at it from a sports perspective, but from the clothing to the ageism to what's being asked of them versus what's being asked of their male counterparts, they're like, we can all relate because that still happens in my industry, even though it's not sports. So they really appreciated my storytelling through that, and maybe some of the pearls of wisdom that I offered up to try and get through that. So that means a lot too. But yeah, when it comes to just, again, like that's my name for them, the knuckle draggers, let them drag away and you just keep shining your light.
Yeah, I consider the source, and it's great. Just ignore that stuff and let it go, because, you're talking about wannabe cyber bullies, wannabe tough people who think somehow they're, they've got some sort of, they get something out of this, whatever it is. But I mean, and ignoring it is probably the best thing to do. I mean, I've responded to a lot of these people in the past, but it's, ignoring it is the best. But if I'm an employer, for example, and if I notice an employee saying stuff like this on social media, I'm firing his ass today. You know what I'm saying? And I'm hoping that's the sort of sentiment that we want to find. If somebody's going to be that ignorant, somebody's going to be ignorant, period, then there should be ramification for it. Maybe down the road we'll see laws against it and whatnot. But it's social media has become like an open highway to indecency in a lot of cases, and it's just not good. And there should be some accountability somewhere along the line. But what are you going to do? If I could ask you one question about let's talk about hockey for a moment, and what you've seen this year. Do you have a feel on which Canadian team might be a team to watch for this year?
Oh, I think you have your usual suspects between Edmonton and Winnipeg, but I have been having so much fun watching the Montreal Canadiens. Much fun watching them. They have been, like a real joy. These young players really coming into their own. I think in an Olympic year, you're also seeing a lot of these players really trying to showcase themselves because they want to represent their country. And in fact, I've just flat out asked them and they have said yes. Like Nick Suzuki wants to be a part of Canada. Cole Caulfield, who was left off Four Nations, definitely wants to be a part of, the Olympic team moving forward. Lane Hudson, we'll see if he'll make it. There's a lot of stiff competition on that blue line, but, the reigning rookie of the year. And then obviously, Sam Montembeault is part of Four Nations. We'll see how that goaltending position kind of shapes up. But like I mentioned, like so many players on Montreal could be going off to teams for the Olympics. Like it's incredible. And I love how they didn't take for granted, like just because they made the playoffs last year, they didn't take for granted that they would just pick up where they left off. They worked for it. They're working hard to be where they are right now. And I mean, give that organization credit. They have locked up all these guys too. So I don't think this is a team that's just going to be good this year. I think it's going to be for years to come. So Montreal to me has been a team really worth watching, and they're exciting. I think the Sens, they can be that way too, but they're still a little up and down without Brady Tkachuk in there. And the Leafs, for me, it's like they don't know who they are anymore. And I don't want to say you take one player out and it's completely changed, because they still have so much star power, but I still think they're trying to figure out who they are without Mitch Marner. What is that top line without him? What is that power play without him? And then obviously dealing with injuries, has really greatly affected them. Tap that in with Joseph.
Big loss, yeah.
Tanev is a huge loss. And then out of the gate, Joseph Woll misses the start of the season. And even though we all know like Stolarz is amazing, like these two guys played the most hockey they've ever played in their lives last year. So now this year there might have to be a little bit more, work on Craig Berube's part to figure out their schedule. Well, that didn't happen out of the gate because Woll was gone and Stolarz had to shoulder a lot of that. And then we all know how it is, right? Like because they played the most last year, maybe they caught some players off guard. This is the National Hockey League. So a lot of players would have studied tape on Stolarz by now, right? So he's got to elevate his game even more. So there's like a lot that's happening with the Leafs where I just feel like, I said this before in another podcast that I did, I'm like, for all the stars they still have on this team, I feel like it's lacking star power. It feels a little meh, meh. So hopefully with that comeback on Monday, with Matthews scoring, Nylander getting 2, like those are the guys you expect, maybe that's the turning point. We'll see, because it's been a little lackluster by the Leafs to start the year for me.
Yeah. I'm seeing a better Riley this year than I've seen last year, for example, or the year before that. He seems to have risen to the occasion a little bit. But you're right. I think they're going to find themselves, and I think it's going to come a little bit later. But I love Craig Berube as a coach. I think if anybody can find the magic here, he would be the guy. Well, Andy, I really appreciate this. Before we go, that we have one final question. We're partnered with a group called Believe, Become, Be You. It's a mentorship program for kids 10 to 17, inspired by the late Sean Gindy, led by Papa Jack. What's the message that you have for any kids who might be struggling to find their way in that age group?
Oh, wow. I would say, lean on the people who truly have your best interests at heart. Don't be afraid to also express how you feel. Oftentimes we feel like if we talk about our emotions or how we're feeling, or if we say that we're struggling, somehow we think that's frowned upon, or it's not cool, or you're weak. No. In sports, right? It's a team environment. We lean on our teammates. Even in individual sports, they have their team around them. It's all about making sure you surround yourself with really good people who truly want to help you, and just don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm a little lost here. What would you suggest? Because I think we work best when we're in a team situation, and there is nothing more rewarding than seeing teammates succeed. So just as good as you would feel making someone feel good, a teammate's going to want you to feel that way too. So surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, and it's nice to be that person you can lean on. That's pretty good for the soul, right? Good soul food. Yeah. All right, Andy, thank you for joining us. Once again, the book is Just Call Me Andy. It's great sports stories from a Trailblazer. Good luck with the book. It's a great book. I was writing a review and I couldn't figure out how to finish it. But anyway, I see it as a love story. A love of everything, love of sports, a love of life, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
All right, Andy. When we come back, Cassie Campbell-Pascal talks about rallying the troops for that improbable win over the Americans. In 1992, the best locally owned restoration companies came together with one goal: to make disaster recovery better for Canadians. And to this day, DKI remains one of the only 100% Canadian-owned disaster restoration groups in the market. Fire, flood, or storm damage. When things go wrong, the right help makes all the difference. With the right tools and local expertise, we handle everything from emergency response to full-scale restoration, getting homes and businesses back on track the right way. Because a home is more than four walls, a business is more than a building, and recovery is about more than repairs. When you choose DKI, you're choosing a company that's put Canada first since 1992. Locally owned, nationally backed, Canadian through and through. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center. Saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Hearing loss doesn't have to mean missing out. At Hear Canada, we help you take charge with a complimentary hearing assessment, because confidence starts with clarity. Discover hearing aids, accessories, and expert care at your local hearing center. Not sure where to start? Our Hearing Health Guide has the basics for you or a loved one. It worked for us. Book your free assessment today at hearcanada.com. Conditions may apply. Prior to the 2002 Olympics, you guys had 8 pre-tournament dates with the U.S. Maybe I think you had 9, and you won the first one, then lost the next 8 in a row. So After that last one, you were captain of the team. You told your club to look the Americans right in the eye in the handshake line. And what was the motivation for that? Tell us about why you decided that would be a good idea.
Wow, you've done your research. I don't know who told you that story, but yeah, I think that was a real frustrating time for me as captain. You know, you kind of feel responsible for what's going on. We were actually 1-8 when all was said and done, and the one win was the gold medal game in 2002. And the U.S. was by far a better team than us. They'd been centralized for 4 years. They had money pumping into their program. The Olympics, of course, was in the United States. We had no business winning, in my opinion, on paper. And I think that last one, you know, Cheryl, who you had on earlier in the show, I remember she was my roommate after that 8th loss in Vancouver. And for some reason, I just remember talking to her saying, you know, what a story this is going to be. Like, we have no business winning and we're going to win. And I think after that game, we lost 3-2 in Vancouver, if my memory serves me correct. We outplayed them. We deserved to win. And I remember just bringing the girls in quickly saying, when we shake their hands, we look them in the eye and we let them know we're not finished here. And I don't know if anyone took me seriously. I definitely looked at everybody in the eye, but, you know, I just had a feeling we were going to win. You know, we just faced so much adversity that year, and a lot of things could have torn us apart. And, you know, we had some tough times from a hockey standpoint for sure. And, but I believed in this group. I believed what we brought to the table. And I think those of us who lost in 98 still had that pit in our stomach. And I think we needed to continue to grow from that and to use that to motivate us to turn this around and win the gold when it mattered the most.
Discover the secret to timeless vitality at Renew Medical Center in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Our specialists unravel the science of aging, tailoring plans to defy its effects. Experience cutting-edge regenerative therapies such as stem cells and exosomes, addressing aging at its core.
It's a wonderful spot, and I highly recommend it for whatever you may need, whether you just want to feel better, you want to look better, have basically a quality of life, just to ramp it up a little bit as we age.
Liberate yourself from aging-related concerns, where accountability, technology, and passion for regenerative medicine converge. Begin your path to peak health and wellness with us. Schedule your appointment today at renewpv.com and elevate your quality of life.
Parents, what's the biggest fear for kids 10 to 14? A future they think they can't handle. At Believe, Become, Be You, we know confidence in the future is a habit we can build. Our course doesn't just prepare kids for the future, it seeds them with skills they will use now. For a limited time, the I Believe in Me Foundation is offering the first 1,000 kids and their parents 1 year free access. This priceless opportunity will save you over $2,000. This isn't just a course. It's a journey in developing life-enhancing skills that will grow with your child, fostering gritty minds, creative futures, and better bonds. Get signed up now at BelieveBecomeBeYou.com. That's BelieveBecomeBeYou.com.
And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, all-around great people. We highly recommend them all. Thank you for your support of Canadian sports. A reminder, the show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, check out our show on YouTube. All of our past shows are on there. Clips, shorts, lots on there. Like and subscribe. It's absolutely free. Our socials, at Joseph Tilley on Instagram and Threads. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show on Facebook. Thanks once again to Andi Petrillo for joining us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business accounting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the need of their clients in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to do business and personal strategies to help people and organizations to succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, their team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca today to learn more. Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today. And let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678.
Joe Tilley here. My wife Penny Claire and I recently took an amazing trip to Egypt and Jordan with Trip Oppo. And here are our top 10 must-dos. Last but not least, we relaxed at a luxury resort and took a dip in the famous Dead Sea. This beautiful resort was a perfect way to cap off our incredible adventure in Egypt and Jordan. After days of exploring ancient ruins and bustling markets, it was wonderful to just kick back, put on a little mud, and soak up the sun by the Dead Sea. Oh, I almost forgot to mention the amazing cuisine in Egypt and Jordan. Don't forget to try the delicious local food like mouth-watering Egyptian barbecue. And the best part is that our Trip Oppo tour includes almost all of the meals, so you can indulge in the local cuisine without worrying about opening your wallet. I would highly recommend that you book your next trip through Trip Oppo. Call them today. Rooted in 60 years of tradition, Sleepy Hollow is a private golf club with a friendly community of members just minutes from Toronto. With mature trees and rolling fairways, Sleepy Hollow provides a challenging and enjoyable experience for passionate golfers. Enjoy great golf, amazing dining, and a picturesque patio second to none. Visit sleepyhollowcountryclub.com.